All right, we're back and we're going to have a really short clip on friendships and networking. Okay, so I know that some subscribers actually like this topic and they like some of the social networking clips I had on Facebook, friendships, and I
Dating
have
sites.
and dating sites. So this is interesting, but this one's going to be your network to help you to succeed. So this is interesting because your current friends that you have may be able to help you in certain areas, but not other areas. A lot of people that I know, you don't have a blueprint or you don't have a model directly that you know to help you in some area of your life. So you can go out and get those friends. I mean, not to get through, find those friends where you can get resources to help you. One of the things that I do is I see a life coach, and I'll find things to talk about with him. And I'll go on mostly a weekly basis, sometimes every 2 weeks, so bi-weekly or even, just little, it's very helpful. So
Coaching in your personal and business career, right?
yeah, so we'll kind of run
and relationships.
and relationships, and he mainly listens and reframes because we're talking like colleagues. And it was kind of cool because he was on a broadcast, a city broadcast, and I called in as a caller. I kind of gave him props, like wow, but I really appreciated it, and I've also cherished it. I'm giving him a gift and thank you card, and I've also going to do something more probably for the holidays. But when you have these relationships in your life, whether they're professional or otherwise, it's important to cherish them. There are a lot of people, even the seminar president. I went to see him earlier in the year, like in the summer. It was like no time had passed. And I'd gone to see him 5 other times. I've known him. He valued me. Gave him some gifts, a thank you card. And I just let him know how much I appreciated what he's done. But do you follow what I'm saying? Like, there are friends that can help you directly, some that can't.
But you bring up a good point about cherishing your relationship.
Oh, so
because
important.
we become a disposable society.
Why is that?
In our marriages, our relationships, our friends. I think it's the fast-paced world, and it's so easy. It's a lot easier to get out of things in relationship rather than sit down with a person resolving them. Whether it's in your marriage or, how many times have friends just part because there's a difference of opinion or something that's happened? If you just sit down and talk about it and get it worked out, you may not work it out the first time you meet, but it's a lot of times in the society, it's just easier to throw it away.
Well, so relationships, and now you might like the book Crazy Busy. It's about ADD and ADHD and the culture, how we live in that disposable culture. I've even seen this in the music world just from studying online and what's going on there. Something is in Brazil, they would say en la moda, or en la moda. So in the mode. And then next second it isn't. I've seen artists, they're called one-hit wonders.
Oh, yes. That's been going on for years.
But it's devastating to their careers because if you look on YouTube, they had several million views with their song, and then they don't have really money views. And people are losing interest or following up with them, or they don't even know who the artist was, they know the song. And so it's dangerous to have some career longevity tied into relationships that were fleeting or temporary. Or to know that your fan base isn't really your fan base at that moment.
Sure.
So, how do you in this fast-paced society manage between networks and friendships? Because one Nashville artist I read in an interview the other day, he said that it was somebody else quoting him. He said that if you aspiring advice for country artists, something like that was the title. He said move to Nashville. He was saying that you got to put yourself in the environment.
Yes.
But then I talked to a Brazilian star, Humberto Gessinger, I think is his name. In 1997, I emailed him, and he was from the Brazilian rock band called Engenheiros do Havaí. And he says you don't have to. He actually said, because of technology, he had been predicting. He already said this 17 years ago, that technology is going to get to a point to where you don't have to even live in a particular place.
Because you speak of Nashville, how many people are there that are musically talented, but they're trying to get their first hit, their connections, and their waitresses.
Yes.
They're working any type of job, just like in the old days in Hollywood, where you wanted to be a star, and you were working any job just to stay there until you were discovered.
But then let me ask you: can we make it about that? You can be successful based on the fact that you
You're
are
not
putting
this-
yourself. You're not giving up.
Not giving up, right?
But what I mean is, like, I wrote a song. I registered a songbook in 2002, and now a lot of these songs. And I've done recordings over the years. I got like a box of all of these demo tapes, but they wouldn't play it on the radio. And I put myself out there because they said you didn't record it professionally enough. You like the song, and and 1.5 million people couldn't hear it. But I didn't have the resources at the time.
Connections.
I didn't have any connections. But I put myself out there so much to the degree that the woman on the bus who was sitting next to me was the producer of the singer that I told you about in an earlier video clip. I thought that the law of attraction was definitely at work, but what ended up happening was I found out that it's not something that is a one-hit thing, meaning you can always do something with your music, and so, or whatever art you have. So, for example, this guy I told you about in the other clip with the networking, Ed Sheeran, right, who's making it real big now. Did you know that he played in the London circuit for 3 years? He was homeless at times, playing out on the streets. There was a period in that time where he wasn't, he was relying on the generosity of others. And it was interesting because the friends and networks that he created then, they really helped him out. What I mean, do you understand? They really were there for him. And he said he had entertained the idea that he was asked by an interviewer, would you walk away from it? And so then, would you walk away from your career? And then he said, no, I knew that I wouldn't. But there were times where he asked himself. And when everything looks bleak and your network looks like it's zero, that you have to, you really need the support and you got to keep going. It's so important to keep going, isn't it?
Oh, it is, because you just need that one connection, that one break.
Explain. What is that one? How does that work?
Oh, it works anywhere in life where, it can work in your personal life, at work, in your job. Basically, how many times have you met one person that changed your life? Or changed your ability to get ahead at work or in sports or anything? Look at probably the people you met at the gym that have helped you get ahead.
The success would not have been possible without
That's right.
them. I told them, I said I would not have been number 2.
Sure. So just one person can change your whole life.
So it's interesting because there are people that'll text me or reach out to me from another gym. And there's one guy, he's an aspiring guy, success philosophy. And so he's interested in these things I learned from doing my own trainings, assisting motivational speakers. And now I'm finding that I'm giving back. And especially this Thanksgiving, obviously it was yesterday, but I'm going to send out a series of cards to a lot of the people, like whether we can help them out in a letter of recommendation. Pretty much everyone that I've written a letter of recommendation for, not that was the only reason, they got in. They got into school or they got the job they wanted that
because of you.
For. Well, I was one hand in it.
Sure.
But we play hands in other people's successes.
Sure.
But they need to be responsible for it and take the action. But why I'm reminded of the people that help me constantly, and I send them things because thank you for helping me out, and now I'm able to bless others. So it's this constant networking that comes through this.
Because none of us are a success without other people.
No.
Because we're all connected in a way.
Even the people watching this clip.
Sure.
You're helping us to do this, or just to...
Because we all, especially on the job or your career.
Yes, so tell us about that.
You can't always do it all yourself. You need the people around you. You need the people that taught you initially in your job with their experience. And if you take a guy that's built a business from the ground up, and he makes it bigger and bigger, and it's more successful, he's got to have all these people helping him to make things work. It's that way in retail. It's that way in medical. The doctors, the nurses, the radiologists. It's just on and on. The connections. We need each other.
Even the people that made our Starbucks drinks.
That's right.
That we took care of also.
That's right. Everybody is a success, not only for their own passion and abilities and their own drive, but the people that are there to help them.
Also, I noticed this makes it easier to be constructive, like the feedback that you get in the workplace. It makes are you going to be more eager to be receptive to the feedback and make improvements?
Sure.
Because I know I've had to improve all the time. It's constant. But the willingness to do it, to get the efforts to meet those benchmarks, it's different. There's also something different between friendships in your personal life and relationships in your professional life, because you draw the distinction. You don't have to be. You don't want to be friends with your boss or other things. You want to keep the fine lines, it looks like, with all these areas. But you want to be cordial and professional.
I have been friends with my bosses before, and it usually works well. But
where do you have to draw the line?
You don't really have to draw the line. You just have to respect the fact that even though you're friends with your boss, you're still going to do your job at your very best.
Yeah, I agree.
More or less, you're not going to use that friendship as an advantage to slack off or do less.
Yeah, I've been invited, like even in Hawaii and here in Ohio, to my boss's they had like a party where they invited staff or faculty or a luncheon, and it was really cool. One of my bosses, just amazing. She was really positioned in the university. She had surfboards. She had a beautiful home on the ocean. I'm like, this is amazing. How did I end up here?
Yeah.
I made all kinds of cool contacts.
But you know why you initially become friends with your boss?
Huh.
Because that boss respects the job you do.
So this is interesting. So if someone respects you, they're willing to go to that.
Especially if your boss has a lot of people under them, and you just happen to be the one he makes friends with, he or she. Because you become close because you've helped him get ahead because you're under him. And he respects the job you do, and you tend to be closer. And you respect the friendship so much, you want to continue to even work harder for that person.
Well, this is interesting that you say that, because this reminds me of a coaching opportunity that I did that led to working on a volunteer basis in an executive board some years ago in the city government. The mayor came across my resume that I was trying at the time. I was thinking it would be cool to get some abandoned warehouse and to have like a motivational center in Cincinnati. Now this is where the networking comes in. Somebody had heard me talking to a teacher at a coffee shop in Clifton. So that's where University of Cincinnati is. And he overheard me and he said, "Have you thought about reaching out to this mayor?" And he has this professional organization. The mayor it led to a meeting. He brought me in. He wanted me to coach him as part of a team, so he used 20 ideas. I was told by his staff. I followed him around with his staff members, but I had a big hand in a lot of the tips that he implemented and did improve his speech. One writer said it was his best speech ever. Now, I'm not going to take sole credit. He applied it. He had other people helping. He's a gifted speaker and writer in his own right, but I could see the things that I told him. He implemented them. But what that led to is being in 2 executive positions, making friends that I keep in touch with.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? And then I was able to go out with him to eat and then pick his brain. So we would talk about things like, for example, what it was like to manage the city, stress management, time management, conflict resolution. It led what you said earlier about the respect factor. It allowed me to develop. It allowed him to develop. And what I notice is these great people, like these superheroes, right? All these people are very down to earth because they know a lot of the successful people at that level, they learn from people. See, if you're not afraid to learn from people, your network's going to grow.
Sure.
And then you're also able to help them out.
The biggest thing people are dealing with in this economic situation in business, we have become, we don't have hands-on leadership anymore. Companies are putting people in charge that have never experienced what the people under them are doing. So there's no empathy for what they're doing. There's no understanding of what they're doing because it's all micromanaged. It's just do it. We want somebody that hasn't experienced what you're experienced because we don't want any excuses. So there's no understanding, there's no connection. It's just, and that's why a lot of employees are so unhappy.
So, well, Brian Tracy, who I assisted at 2 events through that seminar company I told you, he said in one of the seminars, so I assisted, in product sales as a volunteer usher and other ways. But one of the things that he mentioned was that 85% of your personal and professional success is tied into relationships to where 85% of people will also leave if they don't get along with their bosses. So we want to make sure that everybody is valued. I did a presentation, it's a training at the Drake Rehabilitation Center some years ago through a university. And we talked about leadership, teamwork, conflict resolution, building relationships, and teamwork. And one of the things that I told them, they had 60 charge nurses, a CEO, and I told them that you need to reward everyone. And everyone needs to get some sort of reward or motivation because you build the network, you increase the incentives, you increase the buy-in in terms of the worker performance.
But don't you feel we're losing teamwork in this economy?
Well, here's what they said. They said one department that had done that had better results, and that I was correct.
Sure.
And they were going to implement the results. They told me after I did the training that they were going to implement it system-wide. But yes, in this economy, you cannot take anything for granted. You've got to constantly network, do a lot of things for free, and volunteer when you're. We're doing these videos, for example, for the love of the videos. There's not really money attached.
It's not money attached at all.
But we're trying to motivate others, inspire others, and we have a passion for it. So what people can do as they're building their networks and finding opportunities, first of all, you can find a job. You can find a job. I've had to do this before. I mean, I found a job at McDonald's in between teaching opportunities early on in my career. It's almost like a given that you can get a job at certain places.
Yes,
but a lot of people wait for, I got to find the perfect job and then I'll work.
But there's not the perfect job out there.
You can always find something in this economy that builds you and allows you to be more stabilized. And then as you build, you can kind of change gears, downshift. I see a lot of people downshifting to build networks or to prioritize on family.
Well, what do they say? The average person getting out of college now is going to have 7 to 8 careers before they retire.
It's 5 to 7 and then 20 jobs, yes.
Yes. And it's not going to be staying at the same job 30 years. Yeah.
Well, I do still have a long-time approach. So in other words, I do believe that you're more attractive looking for, and in my career development classes, I used to talk about this a lot, and here, make sure you look here and get in there. The networking should never stop. So you can have a LinkedIn profile, or you can be on Facebook or other things, but you've got to create this professional image online where you're constantly putting yourself out there, networking, associating with people. There have been instances, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, where I didn't have my PhD, but I was offered positions on the spot through a casual meeting. I've seen situations happen where if you're prepared and you keep putting yourself out there, almost by accident you'll come across opportunities. I got hired one time for the first colleges that I taught for, one of the first colleges, because a person came into a retail store where I was working. The father knew that I taught psychology, among other subjects. He says, "Can you help my son? Can you counsel him?" I said, "Well, during break, maybe," because I couldn't do it right there. So, and I would love to, I wanted to help him. Turns out the son wanted to do music, was not interested in any courses there. I told the father, I said he didn't want to go there. But I said, "Can I get a copy of it?" So they allowed me to make a copy there, and I ended up teaching for him. So the school that didn't work out for the son was almost like somebody handing it to me. So I believe we're constantly guided to where we need to be for the next step, and that your networks will form based on that.
Well, the networks used to be, before technology, networks were formed. There was the old thing on the golf course. You did a lot of business on the golf course.
A lot of informal.
Informal, yes. Because you were playing golf, and if you happened to be with businessmen, you could have been hired with them in their profession, work for them, meeting people at the gym. Just anything before you had this social networking. It was more face-to-face connection, belonging to different organizations, the JCs.
What is the JC's telling?
That's Young Men's Association, 18 to 35-year-old young men, and you have to get leave after you're 35. And what they do a lot of charity work, and they do a lot of work to build themselves up in local government. Political situations. It's a great organization. I guess you could say it was face-to-face networking, getting connections from people in different fields.
Now, this is going to lead to the next discussion, and I really love this. Let's give him a round of applause. Dr. Experience, thank you very much. we're going to now talk about Living Your Dreams Part 2. So when you talked about getting involved and you talked about, putting yourself out there, now we're going to connect with, we were talking about friendships and networks, but we're now talking about how we should go after our dreams and which networks we should join or create. But mainly it's going to have that focus on, and if you haven't seen the other video clip from the year and a half ago, almost a year and a half ago, it's not quite like that long, maybe a year and 2 or 3 months ago, it's called Living Your Dreams. So there's a part 1. And I have not done the part 2 clip with Jason, but I'm going to do it with Dr. Experience. And then when I visit with Jason, he's down in Florida now, so then I'll do a part 2. And you actually have been to Florida recently, so this is interesting. Maybe we could do a 3-part conversation. Yeah, so now in this next one, why you want to watch this next clip is we're going to talk about living a dream, quenching that thirst, and why it is that some people do it and some people don't. So stay tuned. We are going to have another one on health and fitness after that. So let's give Dr. Experience another round of applause, and here we go.